believed a lie all those years. I was trying to hide away, ashamed of the light of day. Made a choice, thinking I'd be free, but that choice, it imprisoned me in my shame. Till I stepped into the light of God's love, the healing began. I'm free from the shame, I'm healed of the pain. I will be silent no more. I'm free from the lies, love opened my eyes. I will be silent no more. Love broke through to the heart of me. Now the truth has come and set me free from the past. When I stepped into the light of God's love, forgiven at last. I'm free from the shame, I'm healed of the pain. I will be silent no more. I'm free from the lies, love opens my eyes. I will be silent no more. There is power in my story, freedom from this night. There is healing and forgiveness if we step into the light. I'm free from the shame, I'm healed of the pain. I will be silent no more. I'm free from the lies, love opens my eyes. I will be silent no more. I'm free from the shame, I'm healed of the pain. I will be silent no more. I'm free from the lies, love opens my eyes. I will be silent no
Janet Miranda, the Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome back to Just Ask Janet. And as I told you, I was away traveling out in California, visiting with my grandchildren, and I hope you enjoyed the Catholic View for Women. I went back into our past seasons, and I selected some key topics. So I hope in my absence, you enjoyed those shows. Well, the video, music video you just saw is our Silent No More video. And the story of that video is a pretty famous Christian singer and songwriter, Jamie Owens Collins. Actually, when she heard of our campaign, she knew Priest for Life, myself and Father Pavone, and a lot of people from our ministry. And she wrote that song just for us. And then, of course, professionally recorded it in a studio out in LA. And gave it to us as a gift to the Silent No More Awareness campaign. So I hope you enjoyed the power in that music and that story. Well, joining me today on the program is also my dear friend and co-founder of the Silent No More Awareness campaign, and she is Deacon Georgette Forney, and she is also president of Anglicans for Life. And she and I have a lot to talk about. And also we want to take your questions during this episode. So if you have a question for myself or for Georgette, please, let's hear from you. So Georgette, welcome to the program.
It's great to be with you and your viewers, Janet. I was kind of expected you to say, and we have quite a past because we've been down a lot of roads.
Oh yeah, we do, we do. Well, I thought first, for now they saw the music video and perhaps they're wondering. So, how did you two ladies start the Silent No More awareness campaign? So, I thought, Georgette, why don't you just take them quick back snapshot of your own quick abortion, your abortion story, and then how you first went in front of that Supreme Court, and then kind of we kind of got together after that. So, give them a quick overview.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to go back and see what God has done and look back over these 17, 18 years since 2002. What happened was I had an abortion when I was 16 years old, gone through healing finally 19 years later. And I had made a deal with God that when our daughter found out about my abortion, that I could then go public, never expecting that she would learn about my abortion within 3 years of that. So when she was 8 years old, she discovered that her mother had an abortion. And that led to her asking questions. But it also helped me to understand that this 8-year-old knew abortion was wrong. And it planted a seed in me to recognize that we needed to speak, that I needed to speak. So, I said to the Lord, when you're ready, well, it wasn't long after that, I was called to serve in the role of executive director at Anglicans for Life back in 1998.
Right.
And I started sharing my story. And I was kind of surprised at how many people would kind of come alongside me and say, me too. And so when we prepared for the 2002 March for Life, I decided to create a sign that said, I regret choosing abortion. I regret choosing to abort my baby. And I took it on the march, and I was shocked by how many people would come alongside me and say, me too, or I wish you had another sign. And then later on that evening, after the March for Life folks would leave, the pro-aborts would go to the Supreme Court about 5:30, and they would have what they would call a candlelight vigil. And I decided to go up and stand there with my sign and to see how they would respond to a woman who now expressed regret. I was really hoping that they would express empathy and that would, in essence, prove a lot of the pro-lifers wrong that were telling me that, those who support abortion don't really care about the women once they've had an abortion. Well, sadly, I was proven wrong, and they were rude. They were mean. They basically kind of looked down on me. And one woman said, I'm sorry you feel that way. But the rest of them were, what's the word? Contempt, had contempt in their eye for me.
Yeah.
And so as I walked back to the hotel, I was by myself. I was cold. I was crying. I was angry. And I kept thinking, we have to do more, and we have to let them know that the NOW organization does not represent all women.
Right.
And so then I went and Father Frank and Janet and I by then had started developing a friendship. And over dinner one night, I shared the whole idea with Janet and Father Frank, and we started talking about it because they had very similar thoughts with abortion hurts women. And so we decided to try to come together on this. And by the fall of 2002, we launched the Silent No More awareness campaign. Not really clear, having the full insight of what was going to happen and how this was all going to work. But, sometimes you have to step out in faith when God gives you a vision to do something. And that first January in 2003, we had women in, I think it was like 37 of the 50 states.
Right.
At capitals, in state capitals.
Right.
I regret my abortion signs. And we had over 50 women in Washington, D.C. that first year.
Right.
And every year since then, we have had somewhere between 25 and 50 testimonies. At the end of the march, we come up and we get to the Supreme Court, And one by one, woman after woman, man, family members come up now and share their experience of how abortion impacted their lives, but not in a good way, how it
Right.
derailed them, how it undermined their confidence, their self, their sense of self.
Right.
And so after all these years, Janet, I'd say we've been very affirmed that what we started out doing, maybe not clear really what we were doing, and at times, have struggled. But God has really used this ministry, this campaign, to connect with a lot of folks, get them into healing programs if they haven't already attended one, and
Right.
then giving them a voice. Grateful that it's been taken internationally. We've had Silent No More events in Europe, in Asia, in
Right.
Australia, Mexico, South America. So, if you're out there thinking that God is calling you to do something, Silent No More is a great testimony to the fact that He will take your offering and multiply it,
Right.
especially when you come up with a great group of people.
Well, Georgette, when I think back, part of I think the reason or what helped us with the campaign, like getting it going, was if you think back then, the pro-life movement was thinking about, well, another anniversary of Roe, and, the leaders were coming together chatting about what should the message or motto be and all this. And I remember us saying, they have to hear from the women. It's got to be a woman's voice out there now because so many women have experienced abortion. And I remember the first year event, there were some pro-lifers not far from where we were at that candlelight vigil. Of course, the National Organization Women was over there opposite us chanting. And some of these pro-lifers thought we were with them. Remember that initially?
Yeah.
And someone went over to them and said, no, listen to what they're saying. They regret their abortion. Listen to their stories. And you have to admit now, the March for Life, we've come a long way, baby, as they say. Now we're embraced. I mean, remember that like a couple years later, how people were coming up and the women would stand and hold their signs, waiting for their turn to speak. And pro-lifers were hugging them.
Mm-hmm.
One year, a woman came out with a big barrel of red roses, remember? And she went by giving each woman a red rose. I mean, I think the acceptance in the pro-life movement has been tremendous now. But in those early days, it was kind of like, weren't they trying to figure us out, right?
Well, I think that, anytime something is new, it takes a while for people to kind of process it and get it. I think what I found fascinating was once they understood that we were trying to give voice to the reality, we were, this whole abortion rights issue is really built on two pillars. One, that it isn't a baby, and two, women need this right. Well, ultrasound technology has dismantled the first pillar. We know it's a baby, and the pro-aborts will readily admit that abortion kills a child.
Right.
But we need to dismantle that second pillar that says women need the right to abortion. Because when you listen to our testimonies, especially one woman after another woman after another woman, and then you hear from a man and how it destroyed his life, and then a sibling and grandparents, you're like, wait a second. They're telling me this was supposed to be good for women, but these women are all giving testimony of how abortion destroyed their lives.
That's right.
And only by God's grace have they put their lives back together. So I think that the campaign was embraced by the pro-life movement because they understood we were dismantling a critical argument that only our voices could do.
So, Georgette, we have a question here from one of our viewers, Kelly Canobio, and she writes, from what I understand, abortion can cause a lot of medical issues for women afterwards. Is this correct? And of course, Georgette, we have to say absolutely. First of all, I want to encourage you all to go to abortiontestimony.com. That's where we have a directory there. And you can click off whatever circumstance, first trimester, rape and incest, whatever term, and you can start reading all the testimonies that Georgette is telling you about. But as we know, Georgette, the abortion didn't solve their problem. It created so many medical problems afterwards. I mean, in some of these women, the only child they were ever able to conceive was that child that was aborted because of physical complications that happened to them after the abortion. I mean, some of these women ended up with having a hysterectomy down the road, and all kinds. And of course, they're more susceptible to miscarriage because of a compromised cervix. I mean, the list really goes on and on, right? Wouldn't you say, Georgette?
Well, and I would point to your book, Recall Abortion, because there's so much data and evidence in there. And Kelly, I'm sure if you contact Priests for Life, they'd be happy to send you a copy of Recall Abortion, because it does really give the evidence of why we should recall this product. I mean, that was the idea behind the effort to bring up the whole idea of recalling abortion. Not only do we recall our abortion story, our experience, but we believe that this right to abortion, this service that abortion providers provide for women, should be recalled, should be canceled, because it is not good for women, and it is harmful, both physically, emotionally, spiritually. So thank you for your question, Kelly.
Yeah, well, and of course, Georgette, as we say, the motto of the campaign is not whether abortion is legal or illegal. We want to make it an unthinkable choice for any woman in an unexpected pregnancy, which I try to always say is unexpected blessing. May not be expecting to have a baby right now, but, you know, everyone enjoys babies. And of course, the physical damage that can happen to a woman in abortion, it's mind-boggling, all the different complications, that it's much easier to give birth to that baby than abort it, you know?
And I do think that not only is there a physical, but sometimes there's even a physiological, you know, one of the things that I'm very aware of and very conscious of as when you're ministering to the women that we get to the privilege of meeting and working with and getting to know, is oftentimes our experience as having had an abortion, it influences and impacts how we then handle future pregnancies and deliveries. I had a midwife actually contact me and asked me for some help with some research she was doing related to the testimonies, because she was noticing just a very simple pattern that the women that she would help go through delivery, she would do an intake form and ask about previous pregnancies. And the women that had abortions in their background had a much more complicated, wasn't the word she used, but just very, it was just, how did she say it? She would talk about the fact that there was angst in the
fear. Yeah.
Fear. There was a sense of the joy was there, but there was also this underlying dis-ease with what could happen, because the previous experiences with pregnancy had rendered a different result. So I think that, you know, we have to recognize that there's a lot of ways, and you know, healing the shockwaves of abortion, that is part of the initiative that we started in 2015, certainly helps us understand that it's not even just the woman, but family members, the siblings, the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, the friends that drove them. Abortion doesn't kind of leave anybody untouched. I, you know, obviously, I always think first and foremost about the children we lose, and the fact that we live the rest of our lives aware of their life, but missing them deeply.
Right. Well, you know, one story I remember always sticks out in my mind is, and you know her, Karen Reynoso and her mom. And so, brothers and sisters, just, you know, the story. And any story that Georgette and I say, by the way, is full permission from the women. All the testimonies that are on our website, they have given permission. So you have permission, too, to take those testimonies and use them if you're writing a letter to the editor, or for young people, if you're doing a paper in school. Everything is up there with full permission to use. But I always remember Karen saying when her and her mom went through healing together, and that her mom always made these cute little Christmas stockings, and she would hang them on her fireplace at home. And after going through healing, her mother made stockings, not just for her born grandchildren, but for Karen's aborted children.
Yeah.
And they named them, and every Christmas now they hang all the stockings up at Christmas time, and that has always impressed me to say to everybody, you see that they existed, they counted, and this family now acknowledges, and this grandma, these are my born grandchildren, but these are my grandchildren that are with the Lord, so people should realize that, abortion is not a quick fix. It's not a giant eraser that gets rid of that problem right now. It's a lifetime experience. And Georgette, if you could just speak for a minute to healing, because I know you've gone through healing. We always make that a requirement for women and men who, before they speak, they've gone through a healing program. But wouldn't you say, like we always say, that healing is an ongoing process, and that I know so many of the women say that every time they come, some of them have come to Washington they've been with us since the beginning.
Yeah.
And some people will say to them, oh, why do you keep doing that? And why do you keep telling your story? And I always say, and they say as well, because it's another layer of that onion peels away. And so could you speak to that from your own experience, how you feel?
Yeah. I would say that we can't appreciate how much our abortion has caused us pain and guilt and grief and shame until you start walking into healing and forgiveness. And then you begin to realize how much of a burden, and it's like this unresolved grief that's almost been like a monkey on your back. And until you start to address it, it continues to have power over you. When I did my first healing program, I never would have dreamt that I would be here 25 years later,
right,
helping women and doing all this. I thought it was just my little, thing.
right.
But once I got involved and I learned more about the healing programs and how many there are now, it was funny because we wanted to make sure that Rachel's Vineyard was included as a part of the campaign. And I said, well, if we're going to promote Rachel's Vineyard, I want to attend a program, the weekend retreat. And I really kind of thought, well, I've been doing this for a couple of years. I've been sharing my testimony. I think I'm in pretty good shape. And I went on the weekend under the guise of just checking it out. And I was pretty shocked and surprised when I participated and realized there were still unresolved things. So now part of the training and the work that we encourage our regional coordinators, our leaders to do, is to encourage people to not only attend one program, but if I attended my first program in 1995. Attend another program in 4 more years or 3 more years. Allow the Lord to continue to bubble up things, because He will. We're complicated souls, and it's kind of like the more we push it down, the longer it takes to bring it back up and bring it into the light, into His light, as the video talks about.
Right. Well, I just want to remind everyone, if you're looking for one of those healing programs, you can go to abortionforgiveness.com. Again, that's abortionforgiveness.com. Just put in your zip code. It will show you where the nearest Rachel's Vineyard program is and some other healing programs. Mm-hmm. And of course, Georgette, as you know, through that healing process, whether it's Rachel's Vineyard or some of these other programs, you get the opportunity, if the Lord puts a name on your heart, name your child, write a letter to your child. When you think about that abortion, there was no closure, but in these healing programs, the woman gets to have a sense of closure, wouldn't you say, in a connection with their child again?
I think the most important part of the healing programs is the memorial service at the end. And all of the programs do some form of it. And I'll never forget, we had a priest participate with us in the first one I did especially. And he was a very tall, robust man. And we were in a children's chapel. And his gentleness and his grace and compassion to all of us women who had aborted our children, it represented God's love. And it was so powerful in not only redeeming us, but receiving our children into heaven and assuring us that they were in heaven. I can still see that picture of John standing up there at the altar and doing the service. It is one of the most precious, sacred moments in my memories, because when we honor our children, we are reminded that their lives were sacred and they did still count for something.
Right.
Even though they're not here with us, every time we help someone, I feel like I'm honoring my daughter, Elizabeth.
Right. That's true. Well, Georgette, thank you for sharing so openly with our audience. And again, I want to remind you, brothers and sisters, if you'd like to read these testimonies and spread the word about the campaign, go to abortiontestimony.com. Our complete website is silentnomore.com. And again, if you know someone who is looking for healing, abortionforgiveness.com. So thank you for joining us, and tune in again tomorrow, where I'm going to have Dr. Tom Hilges of the Pope Paul VI Institute, and he's got an exciting new book out, and we're going to have a great discussion. So tune in again tomorrow. Thank you for coming to Just Ask Janet. God bless.